Now, if I could invite everybody up to the stage. Thanks. We're going to do a Q&A. If you have a question, put your hand up, or make your way out to the center aisle to the microphone that's here, and you can ask a question to any of the speakers on any topic related to how they might have funded their business. Who's got the first question?
I know I could ask Jason this at home, but Jason, for your family and friends, what kind of a return, percentage-wise, do you give them, and at what milestones or over what period of time?
That's a great question. We didn't talk about any type of real return with them. We didn't want to set unrealistic expectations. So, we talked about our business plan and our financial model and potential exit strategies without directly, saying, hey, we're targeting a 10 times return. So we, in all honesty, we sort of tried to dodge the question as much as possible.
Question in the back here?
Actually, the same sort of question, diving a little bit more. Did you have a different class of shares for the, I guess, your friends and family, people who didn't really understand this investment stuff?
No, another great question. Everything we have in the entire company, even to date right now, through several rounds of funding, is all single common share. And all the advice that we got from every financial person, every VC, every banker was, the simpler you keep the cap table, the easier it is to exit your organization sometime in the future. So.
I got a question for Angel. So when you requested the money, from the investor, what were you thinking, that money to be used for?
Sorry, I missed the first part of the question.
I mean, why do you need the money, when you wanted the money? So what was the reason, for the money?
Use of proceeds. So how did you describe to the investor how you were planning to use the money?
Oh, I see.
In a way that got the investor excited to put the money into your company versus...
The reason why I actually got the first round of financing was because I was pushing money away. When I first met the investor, I never asked him for money and just showed him progress. And I kept thinking to myself I didn't need money. And when we closed the first round of financing, what changed was I knew the business would be successful, but I wanted it quicker. I wanted to scale quicker, and we needed money to do that. And when the investor kept asking, okay, so are you ready now? Then I said, yes, sure, let's scale this up and go into more markets. And I think one of the reason why we were successful with closing financing so quickly was the fact that we didn't want it. So I didn't actually promise them anything.
Other questions? Anyone?
Once you're up and running, how do you get connected to the private investor people? The people who have lots of money, so you're beyond angel investors, you're probably beyond VCC investors or venture capital investors. But so now you've got a valuable company that wants to scale up, and a bank won't touch you, or they're partly financing you.
I'll take that because we had to raise quite a lot of money. At the point I joined the company, we'd pretty much used up all of our basic angel investors. And if I would count angel investors sort of in the classically up to $50,000. But if you want to write guys that write checks of over $100,000, you're in an interesting situation. VCs typically won't touch you unless you want $2.5, $3 million plus. It's very expensive for VCs to make an investment. Expensive for them, I mean. So what I'm beginning to see in the marketplace is an emerging market for what I would call power angels. These are people, you've got to be looking at people who can write a check for $100,000 to $1 million without blinking, right? So they don't have to sell any assets or anything. They have that sort of money available. So you're looking for people that have typically sold, typically are self-made, have made a lot of money somewhere along the line. In terms of how to get connected, I go back to the point I made. Make sure you look at all the people you know, and remember the 6 degrees of separation. Chances are you know people who are linked to the edge of one of these circles, and you can work your way in.
Yeah, we've been very successful in getting a lot of angel investors, and it's mainly because of the publicity we got through The Economist, so we were able to find a lot of high net worth individuals internationally contacting us. So it's really getting your message out there and reaching a wide audience.
I have a question for everybody, actually. So many of the entrepreneurs in the room, you know, they look at the financing challenge as one of these insurmountable challenges. I see it all the time in the events that I go to, and I speak to entrepreneurs every day, every week. Can you share with the audience maybe some of the surprises that you've experienced that have got you thinking that it's not as hard as it sounds when you're first starting to think about it? Some of the little nuggets that have popped up that make you feel good about how easy maybe it's been, or hey, I didn't expect that to come through. That was really unexpected, and it's to my advantage. Those kinds of things.
Yeah, I would say that everything was 10 times harder than I thought it would be, but 10 times more exciting. So.
I'd say one of our mottos that we always keep coming back to whenever we face challenges is sales fixes everything. And it's still a buzz when I get a new contract signed in my inbox there. And I think that whenever we've seen challenges and debate on growth and where we want to hire people and this type of stuff, anytime we double down our efforts on sales and that pays off, that's a big win. That's what helps.
Any other surprises from the group? In terms of the process?
Back to the gentleman's question. It is amazing when you meet people with real money, how quickly they can sign a check if they're motivated. It's very different and a lot easier than going through institutional investors. And yet some of these guys can write checks as big as any VC.
And in that case, Simon, what you probably had an experience or two with that. What was it about the story that you told them that created that level of motivation? I can't believe that it was only the fact they had a thick wallet. There was something about what you said that really got them over the top.
I think without exception, it comes down to a personal connection. In our case, the CEO is a young, bright, techie guy, and I'm an older, less techie business guy. And they just like the combination. I think it comes down to personal chemistry at that point. But we closed 350 grand in 10 days. With one guy from the day we met him. So that was a surprise.
And one of the best advice I've heard was set your end goal and work backwards. And that really helped me was, what do you want to achieve? Instead of looking at it like I need funding, forget about funding. It'll come. Whatever little ways, friends and family, government funding, you'll find a way. But if you know exactly what you want to do with your business and you work at it, people will throw money at a successful business model or join business competition. I didn't have time to talk about that in my 5 minutes, but one of the things that I really surprised me was how much I learned when I went through all those launch party, New Venture BC. I didn't think about getting money or getting first place, but just the process of meeting other entrepreneurs or going through round after round, you learn a lot about your actual business, and that was probably the most valuable thing for us.
Well, and you mentioned that if you have a successful business model, the money will come, and so part of that process is using those events as a way to improve the clarity of your business model, which ultimately leads to success, right?
Yeah, for sure. Like with the 3 business competition we've entered in the last 9 months, I went from thinking I'm going to charge all my users to now there's a business model that works. Now the vendors are paying. So it came a long way, and we never sat down with a piece of paper and nailed it down from day one. It just kept changing as we were meeting vendors or going to events like these. So keep an open mind and stay focused at your goal, and it just gets better every day.
One last question. I think I saw a hand up here or back there. One sec.
This was Simon. Simon, do you have an example of the Canadian trade commissions around the U.S. helping out? I mean, are these people sitting on their hands looking for entrepreneurs coming down and building business in that city? And can we take advantage of them for, what can we take advantage of them for?
Yes, they're absolutely sitting waiting for your phone calls. These are people who are motivated by stories about how they've helped Canadian companies grow and establish themselves. So in our case, the key thing for us was we didn't know which marketplaces we wanted to get into, and we do software that that allows electronic components to talk to each other. So we could be in any kind of markets. In San Diego, they paid for a trade mission for a bunch of Canadian companies to come down. They liked our story. It fitted with the San Diego marketplace, which is a center of excellence for communications and electronics in the US and beyond. And then they paid for exhibitions space for us to go down there. They introduced us to people. They were the first people to get us onto a military base, which is not an insignificant achievement. Think about it this way. If I'm a CEO or a senior manager in a major company in America, what a great dinner story, right? Because you know the way it is, right, with Americans. So they'll say, the Canadian ambassador came to visit me the other day, right? So, and that's kind of the way it works, right? They'll just take the call because it's the Canadian government. They won't take your call necessarily if you're just ABC company from Vancouver.
On the same point, there's typically a local regional trade commission office, in your hometown. I mean, we even have one in Kelowna. There's, one here. So that's a great place to start, get it networked in. I mean, we've used the Canadian Trade Commission a lot to help us in the Silicon Valley a little bit and get us linked into other groups like the C100, and they even paid for me to test drive a Tesla. So, so they're definitely resources that I don't know if they actually paid for it. That's probably getting someone in trouble out here, but they're resources that are definitely there. You need to be persistent and know how to work with them.
I just want to add one last final comment. There's a lot of resources international, but there's also really good resources in British Columbia where if you're an investor and a resident of BC and you invest in a BC company, you do get a 30% kickback on your tax. So therefore, that's a lot of incentive. So as an example, making math easy, if your share in your company is $10 and someone invests in your company and you're a BC resident, they'll invest $10 and the government will give you back $3. So in essence, they're buying a $10 share for $7.
So lots of programs to really help as an incentive. Everybody, let's give them a great round of applause. Phenomenal advice there from everybody. There's so much to talk about. We do have to get rolling, but there's one thing I will share with you. In my role at the BC Innovation Council, as I mentioned, I speak to entrepreneurs a lot, and I've done some research on various elements of the investment market for startups. And there's no question, you probably heard it before, and I'll just share it with you again, there's no question that both angel investors and venture capitalists have all moved their risk profiles a little further down the risk profile of any company. What that means, and you're hearing it when folks complain about there not being any money for startups, that's true. There's no longer money for startups that are high risk. So you have to take as much time as you can to build the risk out of your model. You have to take as much time as you can to create a story that represents a lower risked business model than otherwise you might have had to do in the in early 2001, 2002. These folks are testament to the fact that you can raise money. You can use all kinds of different strategies to fund your startup, from government programs at the provincial level to government programs at the federal level to using the federal government's trade offices. Because remember, if you're out looking for money, it's because you want to put that money to work in some capacity. One of the areas you might want to put that money to work is in business development. Well, what if you could get the federal government to do some of the business development that you thought you were going to put that money to work for? That allows you to still get the same thing done that you had originally planned to do, but without the money. So any way that you can leverage your community resources and the people around you to do the things that you know you need to do to build the company without spending money, definitely do those. So once again, I want to thank our speakers. It was a great session.